Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. Today, I'm delighted to have a returning guest. We've got Craig Willis, who is CEO at Score. Hi, Craig.
Hi, Simon. Great to be back.
Yeah, welcome back. It's been a while since you came on, and with that in mind, it's probably pertinent if you can give the listeners a quick overview of what Score is, in case they've not listened to that episode and they want to go and find it, or in case it's completely new.
Yeah, so Score is a process improvement platform that organizations use to build and establish a process library, standardized processes, and then continuously improve off the back of that. The focus of Score is really about engaging with people in the business. So, bringing the sort of human-centric aspect of processes, making processes user-friendly, intuitive to use, easy to find, so that they support people doing their jobs. And as I said, forming a foundation for process improvement for the whole organization.
An online platform that you can share and collaborate in?
Absolutely. I mean, if you can collaborate with teams to document, create new processes, analyze those processes, as you say, share and manage those, and gather feedback so that so that the teams can incrementally or transformationally improve the way the organization works.
Good. So, it goes without saying, you kind of know what we do, but process, documentation of process, consistent application of process are the holy grail for most organizations, in whether that be retail, office, manufacturing, supply chain, whatever that might be. So what kind of problems are you seeing, or what kind of themes are you talking about with your clients or potential clients?
Well, yeah, exactly. Everyone we speak to is aiming to standardize processes and also train people on those processes, or not just people, but nowadays, obviously, machines and AI as well. But the challenge that most organizations seem to face is, how do they actually build, embed, and sustain that sort of process improvement initiative or process management initiatives for the long term? They can often, the build phase is the one that sort of gets all of the focus. That's when they go out and figure out what the processes are, and go through that exercise to document and standardize them. But so often what happens is things kind of stop at that point, and it becomes very, very difficult to then keep those processes up to date and continue to build on them. And what a lot of organizations end up doing is go through the exercise of documenting all the processes. They sit on the shelf to gather dust, and then the next time someone picks them up, they're so out of date that they've basically got to start all over again. I'm guessing you must see that with your customers.
Yeah, so there'll be a program, a project that's kicked off, which is around, like you say, documenting all these processes, getting them all in one central repository, etc., etc. That work happens. Certainly in retail, hospitality, people move jobs very quickly, so that person may move to another function. Therefore, they're defunct. They maybe haven't got a way of sharing them or collaborating. Maybe it's in a tool where you need a license and an install on a local machine or laptop. So again, that gets lost in the transition or translation. And back to your point, a couple of years later, somebody else comes back round and says, oh, it'd be good if we documented the process, and to some degree repeat.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like we're short of online tools available to share things. I think the real problem, I see there's two sort of key problems here. One is, how do you engage people on a sort of day-to-day basis in keeping processes up to date and improving them? Because processes kind of aren't really that exciting, and they don't really change massively or very quickly. But the problem is when you don't keep them up to date regularly, then obviously as time passes, those changes do get quite big, which is why you then end up having to redo them. So I see that as an engagement problem. And then the other kind of key problem, I think, we certainly often see with a lot of our customers is creating some sort of clear line of sight from the board or the exec leadership team right down to the sort of day-to-day tasks that the staff are doing. And it goes back to that thing that that initial exercise to document, standardize the processes can be quite exciting because it often requires a significant investment of time and money, but it's also where some of the biggest opportunities for improvement get found. But the challenge is once you've kind of got over that hump, continuous improvement is often more preventative, and so it's not always as kind of exciting. So when you're measuring say at a high level the progress of your process improvement activities is often to do with, well, how many processes have we documented and reviewed? And once you've sort of hit those targets, it then becomes difficult to measure what improvements you're making, because as I said, if they're preventative, you're not necessarily seeing an improvement, but you're certainly avoiding major problems, risks, and costs in the future. But it's not easy to see that.
Yeah, and I think for those continuous improvement departments, they're always under pressure to justify their existence.
Exactly.
There's an easy cost cutting to say, well, we'll streamline that department, we'll move that department on, whatever it might be, and you need that fact based. If you can cover the salary as a minimum of that department each year, then you justify your existence. You should be clearly striving for more than that. But if it's cost neutral, why wouldn't you carry on?
Yeah, exactly. And I think what you need, or what teams need to be doing, is measuring more. And I like to think of it as, if you think about how personal health, if you want to get healthier, you don't just go for one run or eat one salad, although that's a good start. Um, we often find that we struggle to, again, sustain that type of positive behavior that you really need to make on a long term. Traditionally you'd be sort of trying to go on your diet and probably weighing yourself on a dodgy old pair of scales once a week or so. And the challenge with that is that it's really hard to see progress. So it's really hard to see the impact of those changes that you're trying to make, and it takes such a long time to lose weight if that's the aim of that you're trying to, the goal that you're trying to reach. But of course nowadays it's much easier because we've got our smartphones, we've got our fitness trackers. So we tend to be, when you're looking to get healthy, you tend to be tracking the calories that you're taking in, you're tracking the exercise that you're doing, you're tracking your weight, you're probably tracking sleep patterns and heart rate and all of those different things. And so you can immediately start to see an impact just in the data from the efforts that you're making. So you're much more encouraged to take those positive actions and to do them much more regularly, to kind of to achieve those goals.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think there's also a bit, isn't there, around where you focus your time. So the scale and the sensitivity of those processes. If you shave 2 minutes off a process that takes 5 minutes that only happens once a year, yeah, that's all well and good. But actually, if you save 10 seconds off a process that happens 30 million times a year, you're going to see a much greater reward and benefit.
Yeah, and that comes down to analysis, doesn't it? But yeah, so sometimes I think that's where, when we measure processes today, we perhaps spend a bit too much time focused on the KPIs and PPIs, so the key performance indicators or the process performance indicators, where we're looking at how people adhere to a process, or the cost savings, as you point out there, if you're performing some sort of analysis. And they're all really important, of course they are, but to me, they're almost a little bit like the standing on the scales once a week in many ways. The health tracker, the personal health tracker, and the ability to see all of that data now helps us understand how all the different things we do influence each other to be able to reach the goals. And so we see that very much the same way with processes. So if you're taking the time to document your processes, yes, the key performance indicator, if you're looking at the sales process, what's the contract value or the number of opportunities closed, those are really key. But if you've invested in documenting and standardizing that process and you want to be able to sustain that over time, you've also got to start looking at things like, have we updated that document recently? Have people been using that document? Have we provided the right type of information for people, such as, is the process owner clearly identified? Is the purpose of that process clearly shown? There's all sorts of information that you can pull together to be able to, just as you can with your personal fitness tracker, really get a feel for what's actually happening with that process documentation, and how is that impacting on both the key performance indicators and the process performance indicators.
So process health.
Exactly that.
So that kind of gets me thinking about, if you think in modern organisations, probably industry agnostic almost, we've got lots of labour turn, pay inflation. I think there's stats that are bandied around more. For every one person that you employ, there's 1.4 people that leave an organisation at scale. So this whole process health must play back in then to onboarding new colleagues and making sure you're training them in the correct process, rather than just inheriting broken or interpreted process at a local level.
Yeah, and that comes back to that sort of sustainability of the documentation, because the worst thing that can happen is when those new people come into the organization and processes are hard to find. Mm-hmm. If they can find them, they're out of date. And what often happens is that even if they're not out of date, they're then overly complicated or difficult to read. And engaging people in this process creation and ongoing update and improvement of the processes, it's got to be more interesting than just, here, go and read this documentation. So that's what we aim to do, is to track all of those health metrics. So the ones I mentioned before, as well as numerous other ones. And so we can show to users what the score of that process or any individual process might be, so that you get this ability to then sort of compare them. And if you think about, again, going back to the fitness tracking apps, one of the things that's quite common is people sharing those through social media, saying, hey, look, I did a 5K run earlier, or I went for this cycle ride. And you also have this kind of sort of bit of pride of your involvement in that and doing that, but also comparing that to other people. So that's a sort of key part to that. Engaging people is giving them that. So giving that data, that health data of the processes, to everybody, so they're much more aware of what happens. But then the other problem that I mentioned before, which is this ability to have this kind of line of sight from the leadership or exec team right down to what's happening on a daily basis. I mean, this is exactly the same challenge. I was talking to a CIO just last week, who said, Craig, the problem when we're in a board meeting, and somebody says, do you know what we need to do? We need to go and figure out all our processes and standardize them as the first step. And he said, everyone always nods their heads, but nobody really knows how to actually go out and do that. And so what we aim to do with the health scores is to basically take that low-level health score that we're looking at on a process by process basis, and roll that up to an executive level, departmental level, whatever that needs to be, so that different senior execs can start to look at, well, how is my part of the organization or my processes within my part of the organization comparing against others, and then the ability to sort of set targets for the whole group so that so that again everyone can see how the whole organization is performing, and if there's a dip anywhere, what do we need to do to go and bring that back up again.
So engagement's a key part then, like say, kind of surfacing that information to the exec so they can start to see it, but also then, I don't know, gamification, is it? So making, like you said, sharing stuff on social, but also making it interactive, are there leaderboards, that kind of stuff that get people excited?
Exactly. So, as you get down through the organization, different teams and sort of management layers can then sort of compare against each other how they're doing. I mean, we've certainly seen this just within our own team, different groups getting together and posting on our internal social networks saying, hey, look, here's my score. And what we do is we set a target for the whole for the whole company, and then different teams are sort of trying to compete with each other to hit or exceed that target. And you straight away see the sort of change in behavior, because when someone starts posting saying, hey, look at my score, it's sort of everyone else is like, oh, I wonder what mine is, and they dive in and have a look at theirs, and then it's like, well, what do I need to do to get my score up? And that it goes back to those good behaviors. It's good behaviors like, well, going and looking at the process at the very least, if you haven't looked at it for a while, providing some sort of feedback to show that that you've understood it, and that it's perhaps changed, and then right through to the whole governance piece of actually updating and publishing new versions of the process. All of those things help to push that score up, and so we're doing it for a bit of fun, but it's actually really helping us keep the processes up to date.
Yeah, and making sure that it's not just an expensive documentation exercise that you then end up incurring the same cost and maybe coming out with, unfortunately, the same outcome X or Y years later.
Exactly, and avoid, as I said before, so much of continuous process improvement is about preventative activity, and so making sure those things are happening. And of course, it's not just that, right? If you've got a well documented set of processes that are up to date, it's also a brilliant foundation for transformation. So if the organization is going to go off in a different direction, or you want to access a new market or introduce new products, that sort of thing, you've got this amazing foundation that's already very dynamic, and able to move and bend and respond very quickly to changes that the organization faces.
Excellent. Okay, so just to summarise then, and tell me if I've got it right. So it gives us a good foundation to build on, as you've said there, so the basis for that ongoing process improvement. We can start to get under the skin of process health and understand those different data points and bits of information that give us that kind of health check that then leads us into the whole engagement piece with the exec team down to the colleagues in the organisation with clear targets, but also that element of gamification, so it becomes a bit more fun, a bit more interactive. It's not just and I'll say it because people are probably thinking it a boring old process. It comes to life a bit more and helps us keep it alive.
Exactly that.
Perfect. So if people are interested in this and they think, yeah, been there, done that, we're just doing another mapping exercise that's going to get lost in the ether of time, or we've done one and people are talking about doing another one and I'm worried we're going to end up in the same place, where's the best place for them to get hold of you or some of the SCORE team?
Or come along to our website, which is getscore.com, so GETSKORE.com. You've got a choice, really. You can request a conversation with one of our experts who can have a look at what you're doing today, look at your requirements, and see how the SCORE platform and its built-in process health capabilities can help. But we've also got some simple guides as well, so if you just want to sort of look through and go, well, what are the sorts of things I should be tracking, what structures should I be putting in place to do this, then we've got that available to download from our website as well.
Amazing. And we'll put the link to the website in the show notes, and we'll put the link to your LinkedIn profile as well if people just want to reach out directly to you via LinkedIn for a conversation. So thanks as ever, Craig. Always good to speak, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you very much.